Chapter 28 of Erewhon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Laura Davis. Erewhon by Samuel Butler. Chapter 28. Escape. Though busily engaged in translating the extracts given in the last 5 chapters, I was also laying matters in train for my escape with Erewhon. And indeed it was high time, for I received an intimation from one of the cashiers of the musical banks that I was to be prosecuted in a criminal court ostensibly for measles, but really for having owned a watch and attempted the reintroduction of machinery. I asked why measles, and was told that there was a fear lest extenuating circumstances should prevent a jury from convicting me if I were indicted for typhus or smallpox, but that a verdict would probably be obtained for measles, a disease which could be sufficiently punished in a person of my age. I was given to understand that unless some unexpected change should come over to the mind of His Majesty, I might expect the blow to be struck within a very few days. My plan was this, that Erewhon and I should escape in a balloon together. I fear that the reader will disbelieve this part of my story, yet in no other have I endeavored to adhere more conscientiously to facts, and can only throw myself upon his charity. I had already gained the ear of the Queen, and had so worked upon her curiosity that she promised to get leave for me to have a balloon made and inflated. I pointed out to her that no complicated machinery would be wanted, nothing, in fact, but a large quantity of oiled silk, a car, a few ropes, etc., etc., and some light kind of gas, such as the antiquarians who were acquainted with the means employed by the ancients for the production of the lighter gases could easily instruct her workmen how to provide. Her eagerness to see so strange a sight as the ascent of a human being into the sky overcame any scruples of conscience that she might have otherwise felt, and she set the antiquarians about showing her workmen how to make the gas, and sent her maids to buy and oil a very large quantity of silk, for I was determined that the balloon should be a big one, even before she began to try and gain the king's permission. This, however, she now set herself to do, for I had sent her word that my prosecution was imminent. As for myself, I need hardly say that I knew nothing about balloons, nor did I see my way to smuggling Erewhon into the car. Nevertheless, knowing that we had no other chance of getting away from Erewhon, I drew inspiration from the extremity in which we were placed, and made a pattern from which the Queen's workmen were able to work successfully. Meanwhile, the Queen's carriage builders set about making the car, and it was with the attachments of this to the balloon that I had the greatest difficulty. I doubt, indeed, whether I should have succeeded here, but for the great intelligence of a foreman, who threw himself heart and soul into the matter, and often both foresaw requirements, the necessity for which had escaped me, and suggested the means of providing for them. It happened that there had been a long drought, during the latter part of which prayers had been vainly offered up in all the temples of the air god. When I first told Her Majesty that I wanted a balloon, I said my intention was to go up into the sky and prevail upon the air god by means of a personal interview. I own that this proposition bordered on the idolatrous, but I have long since repented of it, and am little likely ever to repeat the offence. Moreover, the deceit, serious though it was, will probably lead to the conversion of the whole country. When the Queen told His Majesty of my proposal, he at first not only ridiculed it, but was inclined to veto it. Being, however, a very uxorious husband, he at length consented, as he eventually always did to everything on which the Queen had set her heart. He yielded all the more readily now, because he did not believe in the possibility of my assent. He was convinced that even though the balloon should mount a few feet into the air, it would collapse immediately, whereon I should fall and break my neck, and he should be rid of me. He demonstrated this to her so convincingly that she was alarmed, and tried to talk me into giving up the idea. But on finding that I persisted in my wish to have the balloon made, she produced an order from the king to the effect that all facilities I might require should be afforded me. At the same time, Her Majesty told me that my attempted ascent would be made an article of impeachment against me in case I did not succeed in prevailing on the air god to stop the drought. Neither king nor queen had any idea that I meant going right away if I could get the wind to take me, nor had he any conception of the existence of a certain steady upper current of air which was always setting in one direction, as could be seen by the shape of the higher clouds, which pointed invariably from southeast to northwest. I had myself long noticed this peculiarity in the climate, and attributed it, I believe justly, to a trade wind which was constant at a few thousand feet above the earth, but was disturbed by local influences at lower elevations. My next business was to break the plan to Erewhon, and to devise the means for getting her into the car. I felt sure that she would come with me, but had made up my mind that if her courage failed her, the whole thing should come to nothing. Erewhon and I had been in constant communication through her maid, but I had thought it best not to tell her the details of my scheme till everything was settled. The time had now arrived, and I arranged with the maid that I should be admitted by a private door into Mr. Nosnibor's garden at about dusk on the following evening. I came at the appointed time. The girl let me into the garden, and bade me wait in a secluded alley until Erewhon should come. It was now early summer, and the leaves were so thick upon the trees that even though someone else had entered the garden, I could have easily hidden myself. The night was one of extreme beauty. The sun had long set, but there was still a rosy gleam in the sky over the ruins of the railway station. Below me was the city already twinkling with lights, while beyond it stretched the plains for many a league until they blended with the sky. I just noted these things, but I could not heed them. I could heed nothing, till, as I peered into the darkness of the alley, I perceived a white figure gliding swiftly towards me. I bounded towards it, and ere thought could either prompt or check, I had caught Erewhon to my heart and covered her unresisting cheek with kisses. So overjoyed were we that we knew not how to speak. Indeed, I do not know when we should have found words and come to our senses, if the maid had not gone off into a fit of hysterics, and awakened us to the necessity of self-control. Then, briefly and plainly, I unfolded what I proposed. I showed her the darkest side, for I felt sure that the darker the prospect, the more likely she was to come. I told her that my plan would probably end in death for both of us, and that I dared not press it, that at a word from her it should be abandoned. Still that there was just a possibility of our escaping together to some part of the world where there would be no bar to our getting married, and that I could see no other hope. She made no resistance, not a sign or hint of doubt or hesitation. She would do all I told her, and come whenever I was ready. So I bade her send her maid to meet me nightly, told her that she must put a good face on, look as bright and happy as she could, so as to make her father and mother and Zulora think that she was forgetting me, and be ready at a moment's notice to come to the Queen's workshops, and be concealed among the ballast and under rugs in the car of the balloon. And so we parted. I hurried my preparations forward, for I feared rain, and also that the king might change his mind. But the weather continued dry, and in another week the Queen's workmen had finished the balloon and car, while the gas was ready to be turned on into the balloon at any moment. All being now prepared, I was to ascend on the following morning. I had stipulated for being allowed to take abundance of rugs and wrappings as protection from the cold of the upper atmosphere, and also 10 or a dozen good-sized bags of ballast. I had nearly a quarter's pension in hand, and with this I feed Erewhon's maid and bribed the Queen's foreman, who would, I believe, have given me assistance even without a bribe. He helped me to secrete food and wine in the bags of ballast, and on the morning of my ascent he kept the other workmen out of the way while I got Erewhon into the car. She came with early dawn, muffled up and in her maid's dress. She was supposed to be gone to an early performance at one of the musical banks, and told me that she should not be missed till breakfast, but that her absence must then be discovered. I arranged the ballast about her so that it should conceal her as she lay at the bottom of the car, and covered her with wrappings. Although it still wanted some hours of the time fixed for my ascent, I could not trust myself one moment from the car, so I got into it at once, and watched the gradual inflation of the balloon. Luggage I had none, save the provisions hidden in the ballast bags, the books of mythology, and the treatises on the machines, with my own manuscript diaries and translations. I sat quietly, and awaited the hour fixed for my departure. Quiet outwardly, but inwardly I was in an agony of suspense lest Erewhon's absence should be discovered before the arrival of the king and queen, who were to witness my ascent. They were not due yet for another 2 hours, and during this time 100 things might happen, any one of which would undo me. At last the balloon was full. The pipe which had filled it was removed, the escape of gas having been first carried